Last week, I had the opportunity to speak with a French engineer who had just returned from Burkina Faso. He said, I went there with the mentality of a Western expert who would help a poor country. But what I saw there astonished me. Ibrahim Traoré and the people of Burkina Faso are doing things that we in Europe would never even dare to think about. The story he told me was truly incredible, especially as they had just made an unprecedentedly bold decision to withdraw their entire $5 billion in gold reserves from London and bring it home. A decision that economic experts called insane, but which created the biggest shock in African financial history. To understand why this was so seismic, we have to go back to 2014. Burkina Faso was one of the world's poorest nations, controlled for 27 years by the dictatorial regime of Blaise Compaoré. The country had a GDP per capita of just $790, lower than Haiti's. 44.5% of the population lived below the absolute poverty line. The literacy rate was only 28.7%, one of the most dismal figures in Africa. The healthcare system had collapsed, with only one doctor for every 25,000 people. The nation's vast gold resources, estimated to be worth hundreds of billions of dollars, were entirely in the hands of Western multinational corporations. What was most painful was that 95% of Burkina Faso's national gold reserves were stored in London, Paris, and New York. The Burkinabe government had to ask for permission from the Bank of England every time it wanted to use its own gold reserves. This was not an isolated case, but the common reality for 14 African nations in the CFA franc zone, which are required to deposit 50% of their foreign exchange reserves in the French treasury. A system described by economists as modern financial colonialism. For decades, the World Bank and the IMF asserted that keeping gold reserves in Western financial centers was safe and efficient. They produced thick reports proving that African nations lacked the capacity to manage their own assets. They were dead wrong. Until Ibrahim Traoré appeared and completely changed the game. Traoré is not a typical politician or a Hollywood celebrity. Born in 1988 to a poor farming family in Muhun province, Traoré graduated with excellent marks in geology from the University of Ouagadougou. He once worked as an ordinary mining engineer, directly witnessing how foreign corporations depleted the country's resources, leaving nothing for the local people. Quiet but decisive, Traoré possesses a profound ability to analyze problems and propose scientific solutions. On September 30th, 2022, amidst political instability and the civilian government's inability to combat terrorism, Traoré and a group of young officers carried out a bloodless coup. The initial reaction from the international community was skepticism and opposition. The European Union suspended aid, ECOWAS imposed sanctions, France and the US cut military cooperation. But what the world had not yet realized was that Traoré was not seeking external approval. When Traoré assumed the role of president, his first message was simple but resolute. Burkina Faso will no longer be a slave to anyone. We will retake control of our resources and build our future with the hands of the Burkinabe people. Unlike the empty promises of previous politicians, Traoré had prepared a specific, scientific, and feasible plan. The first phase was financial sovereignty liberation within 12 months. The goal was to withdraw all of Burkina Faso's gold and foreign currency reserves back to the country, establish an independent central bank, and issue a new currency independent of the CFA franc. The methods included bilateral negotiations with central banks, building a modern gold security system in Ouagadougou, and creating a domestic electronic payment network. The second phase was resource industrialization from months 13 to 36. Instead of exporting raw gold, Burkina Faso would build factories to process gold into jewelry and high-tech products, increasing export value by 500%. Simultaneously, it would develop the mining and processing industries for other minerals like copper, zinc, and phosphate. The third phase is the Burkina Faso development model over the next 5 to 10 years. The long-term vision includes becoming the financial hub of West Africa, exporting its independent development model to other African nations, and contributing to the building of an economically unified Africa. And the most important thing that made the difference, everything would be done by the people of Burkina Faso, with the resources and intellect of Burkina Faso. No aid from the World Bank, no loans from the IMF, no dependence on Western technology, no need for foreign experts. And then, on March 15th, 2024, the miracle began. March 15th, 2024, will be recorded as the day Burkina Faso changed forever. There were no loudspeakers urging action, no top-down propaganda, no threats or coercion, just a simple message passed from mouth to mouth, from village to village. Today, we reclaim the gold of our ancestors. Everyone has a job, every household a contribution for Burkina Faso to be truly independent. The people's response was more immediate and powerful than Traoré could have ever imagined. In Hawet province, home to the country's largest gold mine, over 50,000 miners voluntarily worked overtime without pay to increase extraction output. They used both modern tools and traditional methods to dig for gold from early morning until late at night. The immediate result was a 40% increase in gold production in the first week alone. The working spirit was sky high, with the folk song Our Gold, Our Land echoing throughout the mines. In Burkina province, engineers and construction workers volunteered to build West Africa's most modern gold storage facility without taking a single cent in payment. This region's unique characteristic is its centuries-old tradition of goldsmithing. A 67-year-old artisan named Amadou Ouedraogo shared, "All my life, I've made jewelry from imported foreign gold. For the first time, I get to craft with gold from my own homeland. This feeling is indescribable." The local challenge was the lack of modern equipment, but they creatively devised many high-precision handcrafted tools, combining traditional techniques with simple technology. In the Mossy Plateau, over 200,000 farmers organized into cooperatives to supply food to the miners and engineers. The scale of the operation covered 500 villages and over 100,000 hectares of farmland. The unique contribution of this region was the application of traditional organic farming techniques to produce clean food, ensuring the health of the workforce. They coordinated interregionally by setting up a network for transporting agricultural products by motorcycle and bicycle, creating a logistics system entirely managed by the people. What was astonishing was not just the scale or speed, but the spontaneous spirit of unity among the people. Salimata Sawadogo, a 34-year-old mother of 4 and a primary school teacher in the village of Kubri, organized 200 women in her village to cook free meals for 2,000 mine workers for 3 consecutive months. Her family situation was difficult, her husband had passed away early, and she had to raise her children and teach alone. But her motivation to participate was clear. "I want my children to grow up in a truly free Burkina Faso, not having to beg for every dollar of foreign aid." Her specific actions went beyond cooking. She also organized personal finance classes for women, helping them understand the value of holding gold domestically. Her personal emotion upon witnessing the first gold bars being transferred from London, "I couldn't stop crying. It felt like being reunited with a relative who had been missing for many years." But the Reclaim the Gold campaign wasn't just about emotion or spirit, it was about science, organization, and operational efficiency. The distribution system was organized in a pyramid model with a central committee in Ouagadougou as the brain, 45 provincial committees as intermediaries, and thousands of village committees as the base. Each level had clear tasks. The central level planned strategy and overall coordination. The provincial level allocated resources and monitored progress, and the village level handled specific implementation and reported results daily. The division of labor was scientifically designed according to expertise and ability. Mining engineers were responsible for extraction and quantification of gold. Traditional goldsmiths handled refining and shaping. Farmers provided food and logistics. Teachers and intellectuals handled propaganda and education. Youth and students worked on communication and mobilization. The elderly served as advisors and passed on experience. Coordination methods combined simple technology with traditional practices. The mobile phone network was used for communication and real-time progress reporting. Local radio stations broadcast coordination information 6 times a day. An automated SMS system updated 2 million citizens on the situation. Simultaneously, traditional village conferences were held weekly to discuss and resolve issues directly. To resolve conflicts and disagreements, they applied the traditional palabre system combined with modern mediation. Every dispute was brought up for public discussion, all opinions were heard, and a solution agreeable to all parties was found. During the 6-month implementation, there were only 23 serious conflicts, and all were resolved within 48 hours. Simple technology used included precise electronic scales to weigh gold, digital cameras to document the process, GPS to track transport locations, and solar-powered generators to supply electricity for equipment. The use of available resources was highly creative. Old imported containers were repurposed as storage warehouses. Motorcycles were modified into small-scale gold transport vehicles, and traditional construction techniques were applied to create modern protective structures. The most outstanding innovation was the invention of the smart gold bag, a gold packaging system with a QR code allowing every single bar of gold to be tracked from the moment of extraction until it reached the central vault. The communication system used a combination of radio, SMS, and in-person meetings, ensuring information was transmitted accurately and promptly to everyone involved. Quality assurance was implemented through a 3-tier control process: inspection at the mining site, inspection at the provincial center, and a final inspection at the central vault. Measurement and tracking were conducted through a daily reporting system with clear indicators: volume of gold extracted, purity percentage, number of participants, and community satisfaction level. The feedback and improvement process was organized through weekly review conferences in each village, where everyone could share opinions, propose improvements, and discuss challenges. Transparency was ensured by publishing daily statistics on the radio and the government website, allowing every citizen to monitor progress. A specific example: at the Essakane gold mine, Mr. Ibrahim Traoré, a 45-year-old veteran mining team leader, along with 500 colleagues, implemented the 21 consecutive days plan, working without rest for 21 days to achieve the goal of extracting 2 tons of gold. The process began at 4 a.m. with equipment and safety checks. At 6 a.m., extraction began with 3 rotating 8-hour shifts. The biggest challenges were the harsh weather and lack of clean water, but they solved this by building simple water filtration systems and creating temporary rest areas. The phased results: the first week yielded 0.6 tons, the second week 0.8 tons, and the third week 0.6 tons, for a total of 2 tons of gold as planned. The measured results were: annual gold production increased from 45 tons per year to 73 tons per year, a 62% increase in 6 months. The number of participants grew from 50,000 to 380,000 people, an expansion in 3 months. The gold purity rate increased from 85% to 94% thanks to improved refining techniques. Public trust in the government rose from 34% to 87%, according to an independent survey. Amadou Traoré, a 52-year-old goldsmith from Bobo Dioulasso, shared, "I've been in this trade for 30 years and have never seen people so united. Every day I wake up, I see a stronger Burkina Faso. My son now tells his friends in English, 'My country is rich, we have our own gold now.' That is a pride that our previous generations never had." September 8, 2024 will be forever remembered in the history of Burkina Faso and perhaps the world. It was the day the gold returned. The first special flight carrying 12 tons of gold from the Bank of England's vault in London landed at Ouagadougou International Airport. The sight of hundreds of thousands of people gathered at the airport to welcome the ancestral treasure back after decades in exile was an image that shook the world. The numbers say it all. The total value of repatriated gold increased from zero to $5.2 billion within 6 months. Foreign currency reserves rose from $1.1 billion to $6.3 billion in record time. Burkina Faso's GDP grew by 28% in just 1 year, the highest growth rate in Africa. The new domestic currency, the Burkina franc, stabilized at a rate of 1 Burkina franc equals 1.2 US dollars, stronger than the CFA franc and many European currencies. But the most impressive figure is not the dry data, but the change in national pride, from a nation begging for aid to an inspiration for all of Africa, an unprecedented spirit of unity in Burkina Faso's modern history, a belief in the future, as for the first time, people believe their children can have a better life right here at home, and a change in how the world views Africa, from a continent to be saved to a continent saving itself. Traoré at the airport on September 8th. This is not just gold, this is freedom. This is proof that Africa can be sovereign, self-reliant, and proud. From today, Burkina Faso no longer asks anyone's permission to use its own assets. We will continue on this path until every African nation is truly independent. But this was only the beginning of a larger revolution. Within 3 months of the day the gold returned, tangible changes were visible all over Burkina Faso. Economically, GDP per capita increased from $790 to $1,340 in just 9 months. The unemployment rate dropped from 77% to 45%, thanks to the creation of 420,000 new jobs in the gold mining and processing sectors. Export turnover increased by 156%. With 68% being processed gold products instead of raw gold as before. Foreign investment surged by 230% as Asian and Middle Eastern investors began to take an interest in the Burkina Faso model. A before and after comparison shows, in 2023, Burkina Faso imported 89% of its consumer goods. In 2024, this figure dropped to 34%. Socially, people's lives changed markedly. 85% of rural families now have electricity, up from 12%. 78% have clean water, up from 31%. 67% of children complete primary school, up from 41%. And transportation has improved with 2,300 kilometers of new roads and 450 bridges. School attendance rates soared as parents became more financially stable. 94% of primary school-aged children are now in school, up from 61% the previous year. Education quality has been invested in, with 5,000 new teachers and 1,200 schools built or repaired. The healthcare system witnessed a true revolution. The number of doctors per capita increased from 1 per 25,000 to 1 per 8,000 people. 67 new health centers were built, child mortality rates fell by 34%, and average life expectancy increased from 61 to 67 years. The security situation improved significantly as people gained employment and stable income, with crime rates dropping by 28%. And more importantly, an unprecedented spirit of social cohesion. Testimonials from various walks of life. Fatimata Ouedraogo, 28, a nurse in Koudougou. Before, the hospital lacked medicine, lacked equipment. We watched helplessly as patients died because they had no money for treatment. Now everything is different. We have enough modern equipment and medicine. People also have money for checkups and treatment. Solimain Cabaret, 54, a farmer. I sold my rice to the new food processing plant for double last year's price. For the first time in my life, I can send all 4 of my children to university. Dr. Aminata Sawadogo, a young doctor who had planned to emigrate to France. I cancelled my plans to go abroad. Burkina Faso now offers career opportunities no less than Europe. Psychologically and spiritually, the change in mindset is the clearest. From a beggar mentality to a mentality of self-reliance, people no longer wait for aid, but actively seek ways to improve their lives. Trust in the government increased from 34% to 89%, and faith in the country's future rose from 23% to 91%, according to independent surveys. Observable behaviors include a 340% increase in voluntary participation in community projects, a 67% increase in the rate of youth staying in their homeland instead of migrating, and a 78% increase in the trend of using domestic products. A new culture formed with Gold Day being celebrated monthly to honor the spirit of self-reliance, the Buy Burkina Faso movement spreading across the country, and the slogan Notre Or, Notre Fierté, our gold, our pride, becoming the unofficial national motto. A specific example, Rasmane Ouedraogo, 34, a computer engineer in Ouagadougou. I used to dream of working for Google or Microsoft in Silicon Valley. Life in Burkina Faso was too hard, with no opportunities for development. Now I am building Burkina Faso's first fintech startup, serving the electronic gold payment system. My life has completely changed because I can see a bright future right here in my homeland. My wife and children no longer have to live in fear of scarcity, and more importantly, I'm contributing to building a strong Burkina Faso. Before and after images show, the streets of Ouagadougou transformed from dusty roads with old motorcycles to modern boulevards with many new cars, markets from temporary stalls to modern shopping centers, and especially the confident smiles on people's faces replacing the worried looks of the past. The impact rippled beyond Burkina Faso's borders like ever-strengthening waves. In West Africa, the reaction from neighboring countries was diverse. Mali and Niger began studying the possibility of repatriating their gold reserves, with Mali announcing it would withdraw 40% of its gold reserves from France in 2025. Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire organized workshops on the Burkina Faso model to learn from their experience. Senegal and Benin invited a delegation of Burkinabe experts to share their experience in independent resource management. On the world stage, the initial reaction from international organizations was skepticism and opposition. The World Bank warned of financial instability risks if African countries manage their own reserves. The IMF advised Burkina Faso to be cautious and consult international experts. However, as the positive results became increasingly clear, the United Nations acknowledged Burkina Faso's success and included it as a case study for sustainable development. Development experts had mixed opinions. Western experts remained pessimistic, with Joseph Stiglitz, Nobel laureate in economics, remarking, "This is just a short-term phenomenon. African countries lack experience in managing financial risks." Conversely, African and Asian experts were more positive. Professor Samir Amin, Cairo University, affirmed, "Burkina Faso." International media was strongly polarized. The BBC and CNN mainly reported negatively, focusing on the risks and inexperience of Burkina Faso. France 24 and RFI even warned of extreme nationalism in Burkina Faso. In contrast, Al Jazeera, RT, and CGTN reported positively, praising the new development model and success worth learning from. African media like Africa News and All Africa reported very positively, calling it the awakening of Africa. Academic research exploded, with over 200 papers and reports on the Burkina Faso model published within 6 months. Leading universities like Harvard, Oxford, and the Sorbonne all opened case study courses on Burkina Faso. Interestingly, studies from Africa, Asia, and South America were much more positive than those from Europe and North America. The investment community reacted with surprising positivity. Gold became a new safe haven asset, with the world gold price increasing by 12% just after Burkina Faso announced its plan. Asian investment funds, particularly from China, India, and the UAE, invested $2.3 billion in Burkina Faso in 6 months. Even some European investment funds secretly invested in projects in Burkina Faso, despite the official stance of their governments. The most noteworthy effect was the domino effect. Within 6 months, 12 other African nations announced plans to repatriate a portion of their foreign exchange reserves, creating a crisis of confidence in the European financial system for the first time since World War II. Projected challenges include pressure from the international community, a shortage of high-level technical experts, and competition from countries with long-standing traditions. The prepared solutions are to collaborate with Asian universities for human resource training, invest heavily in R&D, and build the Burkina Gold brand with international quality certification. Resource allocation is carefully calculated: 40% for production, 30% for R&D and training, 20% for marketing and brand building, and 10% for risk contingency. Phase 3, from 2 to 5 years onward, has much greater ambitions. Burkina Faso will become a blockchain technology hub for electronic gold payments, export its resource sovereignty model to 20 other African nations, and invest in AI technology to optimize the mining process. International impact includes the establishment of an African gold standard to compete with the London Gold Fix, creating an independent African gold market, and becoming a major voice in global gold pricing. Technological advancement focuses on developing green mining technology using 100% renewable energy in gold mines and applying IoT for efficient management. Institutional building includes establishing the African Gold Research Institute, the Burkina Faso University of Mining Engineering, and the African Resource Development Fund with a charter capital of $10 billion. The 2030 vision is ambitious but feasible. Burkina Faso will become a high middle-income country with a GDP per capita of $8,000, a poverty rate below 5%, and 95% of the population with access to electricity and clean water. Its position in the region and the world will be that of West Africa's financial center, an important member of BRICS Plus, and a strong voice in international organizations on resources and minerals. The story of $5 billion in gold being brought from London to Ouagadougou is not just about economics or politics. It is a story about human dignity, about the right to determine one's own destiny, about a people refusing to accept the status of a beggar on their own richly endowed ancestral land. When the first gold bars were unloaded from the plane onto Burkinabe soil, it was not just a transfer of assets from one place to another. It was the moment a nation reclaimed its soul after centuries of spiritual and economic colonization. Traoré once said in an interview, "They can take our land, they can control our government, but they cannot take away the will and wisdom of the Burkinabe people. When we decide to stand up, no one can stop us." Burkina Faso has said no to dependency and yes to a self-reliant future. They have turned a dream into reality. Now, it is our turn to write our own story.